of identity. You know, when I was growing up, an artist lasted 10 to 20 years.
Right.
Today, artists last 1 or 2 years, and they consider that a long career. So if I know an artist today, 2 years from now, my kids will say, who is that? And I don't even know what you're talking about. And I think that this kind of fast turnover is not good. Yet in the middle of it, I think those that have had the staying power and the stability, like Russell Simmons as a leader in the industry, like P. Diddy, I think they will be the ones that will bring the talent out because they have passed the test of time and know the difference between what is real and what is not real.
Wow, wow. Are we finding that we're seeing things happening in the clothing industry now? I mean, we're seeing, I think now probably more African Americans that are owning up, you know, their own labels and stuff, more so than we've seen, let's say 30 years ago or so.
Absolutely. And I think what it will do, it will change the decor of America, because as African Americans own more, the style changes. And you start seeing, you know, it was a time when you'd see the longer jackets, only a Steve Harvey would wear. Now you're seeing all kinds of entertainers, white and black, start wearing and dressing and behaving differently. We set a different tone. That's one thing hip-hop did. Hip-hop changed the entire culture.
Yes.
So you go in deep suburbs and you see young white kids with baggy pants.
Yes.
And I think that that's a way the spirit permeates through without people even understanding it, because you end up imitating what turns you on rather than being satisfied with what turns you off.
Wow, wow. Drugs across America, addiction, is it rising?
I think that it's still there, but I think that it is not necessarily rising, but it's not necessarily falling either. The only thing that will solve drugs is a spiritual revival.
Yes.
Because people don't go on drugs to kill themselves. People go on drugs to fill a void. And unless you can fill that void with something else, they're going to seek for it. Why do people reach out for drugs? Because they can't deal with reality.
Yes.
And if you give them God and a sense of who they are as God, they can deal with reality because they are the makers of their own reality.
Yes, 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 yes. Wow. Well, we're glad to see that you're still in the elections.
Well, I'm glad to be there. Thank you. And I'm glad in the sense too that I want to say things and get things done that may not have been done if I was not there. And I'm very happy to have the prayers of you and your family. Yes. I always stay in touch with you, yes, because yes. I feel that what I'm doing is as spiritual as when I was a boy preaching in Washington Temple.
Amen, amen. I remember the first time I believe we met was with Mayor Dinkins, and I believe it was you, Mayor Dinkins, and I think Reverend Jesse Jackson was there at Bishop Brown's church there. And we had the opportunity to minister the word of the Lord to you and prophesy. And my mind goes back every time I look at you on the media, how God said how he was going to change your image, and how the whole image would change, and how God would thrust you out into America. And to see in this hour that you did things in running for the mayor of the city, now looking back, and now you're out there running for president. What you see God's purpose in all of this? I mean, you started preaching, I believe, at 10 years old,
I was ordained at 10. I started at 4. And I think he has several purposes. I think one is to speak for people that has not been spoken for, so they cannot be ignored and marginalized. And because I grew up under men like Adam Clayton Powell and Jesse Jackson, I was trained in the tradition to do that. I think also he wants to show young people that you can come out of a hardcore ghetto, poor, grow up on welfare, broken home, and aspire.
Wow.
I tell a lot of young people as I travel, Bishop, that if they stand there and watch a debate and see me that comes out of Albany Projects, father left when I was 10, grew up on welfare, you stand in line to get the welfare cheese in the brown box, and yet I can walk on stage and out-debate governors and senators that were millionaires at birth, then that means they don't have to go on drugs, and they don't have to turn into hoodlums. If I can do And you have to be a living example to them of what God can do. Don't just tell them what God can do. Show them in your own life what God can do.
Yes.
And I think that's a purpose. And there are probably many purposes that it would not even be revealed to me. Because one thing about God, he doesn't have to tell you what he's doing with you. You just submit and let him do what he's doing.
He has to just keep working right through you. My God. As we are looking at the move of the Spirit, across America, around the world, we've had to deal with racism in terms of black and white in America. But now I feel as though God is dealing with another kind of racism, and that's religious racism. And I think that's the next area. And I believe that those of us that has been affected with racism based on race, we're going to possibly have to become the voice of those that help brings healings between the Muslim community and the Christian community and the Jewish community. What are you seeing happening here with these major religions? Because it seems as though at some point things were trying to polarize here.
I think that right as we faced the terrorism, there was the whole adversarial pole set up between Muslims and Jews and Christians. And I think that you're right. I think that we are in a unique position to understand the pain of all and to relate to all. I know, I'll give you an example. In the end of, I think it was in October of 2001, I went to the Middle East as a guest of the Foreign Minister of Israel.
Wow.
And it was he that told me, you ought to meet with Arafat. I said, well, I thought the Jews were against that. He said, well, some are. But only leaders can talk to leaders, and the only way we'll ever get together is if everybody talks. And I went and met with Arafat in his car.
Wow.
And they put on the front page of the New York Post, why would Sharpton meet with Arafat, never knowing the Foreign Minister of Israel sent me there. And the Arafat that I talked to and the Sharon Peres that I spoke to, who was the Foreign Minister of Israel then, they were not that far apart. But because they represented various religious beliefs and state beliefs, sometimes you become a prisoner of your own following.
Woo!
And I think that you've got to be careful to lead rather than becoming a captive. And I think that that is where we can break through because of what we've gone through in history, and what we've endured and what we've suffered. We can talk with more moral authority to everyone in the world because our story is clear, yet we're still here to tell it, and we survived it. There's no practical reason what blacks went through that we even should be existing.
That's right.
I mean, what the slavery we went through, from names taken, forget all of the physical, the psychological.
Yes.
It was against the law for us to even name our children after us, against the law to marry. If a man broke in your house and raped your wife in front of you, you couldn't even call the police. If you did, they would kill you.
Yes.
Yet we survived the worst diets. We survived on hog guts and Kool-Aid.
Jesus.
But we're still here. And the fact that we are here means the whole world's got to respect us, because God must have sustained us for a reason, not just for a season.
Come on, my God, my God, my God. Oh, bless the Lord.
I remember when they shot a young man, and you were helpful with this struggle with us, Amadou Diallo.
Yes.
Young man from Guinea, was shot at by police in New York 41 times. And I remember I took his body home to bury him. And we raised the money, and you were helpful to bring him home. And it never occurred to me to standing there what God would do. I stood there as I spoke in the mosque, because he was Muslim, at his funeral. And I said, many of you don't understand what we're doing here. I said, and I didn't either. I said, but this is really the story of Joseph. I'm the one you sold into slavery. You sold us, Africans, sold us into slavery. You never knew that we'd be the ones that would have to come back and stand up for your sons being shot. I know you didn't recognize me because my complexion is different and my hair is different, but I'm your brother. I'm the same one you put in the pit that God took out of the pit and put on the throne.
Woo. Wow, that's so prophetic. Because with Joseph, you're seeing that he was sold by his brethren. He was put in the pit, which we're dealing with right here. That's so prophetic, prophet in training. Then made to serve and be a slave in Potiphar's house. Turn around and put in prison for a crime he's never done.